Welcome to Tax Tuesday. My name is Roderick Robeson, and I am a Texas certified public accountant. In all January, I gave you some guidance on working with the CPA. We started with an evaluation on whether you needed a CPA, and then I gave you some guidance on how to select a CPA. In the previous episode, I gave you some do's and don'ts after you've selected your CPA, and now we're going to talk about give you some tips on actually working with the CPA. You've selected a CPA, you've interviewed them, you're ready to go, and now you want to get started. So the first tip I want to give you is you need to read your engagement letter. Thoroughly read the engagement letter. What's the engagement letter? It's just your contract, and it's going to lay out the scope of work. It's also going to give you the rules of the game, so to speak. How do you work with the CPA? What happens if there's any kind of disputes, if something goes wrong, if there are any mistakes? So you want to make sure you thoroughly read that engagement letter prior to signing. Because it's interesting to me, what I see happen often this time of year is there's different things that need to be done. The client comes to the CPA, and then there's an expectation that there's extra work that's out of scope that's going to be done. But if you've read the engagement letter, you would recognize there's going to be an extra charge for something that you hadn't, contracted for. I think that's pretty straightforward. And what ends up happening is, after you go through this exhaustive process of trying to pick someone, it's very frustrating and it's very tiring, and you're glad that you have someone. A lot of times clients, they just forget. They just don't even think about it. And they just want to get things done. And so they just say, hey, take care of this, and then we have to remind them, look, this is outside the scope of what you've contracted for. So you just want to make sure you read that engagement letter and that everything you want done is in that engagement letter. So the next tip is to trust the process. So if you trust my process, your engagement letter is going to have everything that you need in it, because I have a holistic approach when I work with clients. I don't try to just do the tax return as soon as I meet the client. On the front end, we do a full holistic view of your entire tax profile. And then from there, we give you options on things that you can select. You can take it all, or you can take one or two things kind of a la carte. But at any rate, you want to trust your CPA's process, because that process is going to be the thing that minimizes errors, and it's going to get the best result for you. We've been doing this for a while, and so we put these processes in place not just to protect us, but to protect you. It's to help you to get the best result. And so when a CPA lays out a process for you, you want to make sure you trust it. Don't try to come in and then tell the CPA how, you want to work with them. You say, hey, look, just follow the process that they lay out for you. There's a reason for nearly everything that happens in that process. You also want to participate in the process. So oftentimes I've had clients where they'll sign up on the front end, they're happy, we're ready to go, and they just disappear. It's like we don't hear from them. We reach out to them, we call them, we say, hey, we need this information from you, and they just kind of fall off the face of the earth. Now, to be fair, I know that a lot of CPAs are the same way, and that's not the case in my firm. I crafted my firm around all the mistakes that I've seen other CPAs make. And so we communicate with our clients as much as possible and as frequently as possible. But you don't want to just disappear as a client and then at the end of the year have an expectation that, you give them your tax documents or whatever it is you need, and then they're supposed to turn it around within a couple of days. I mean, that's a good way to lose a CPA altogether. And like I've said in previous episodes, we all talk to each other. And so we don't want clients that are just going to try to drop stuff in our lap at the last minute, especially when we've communicated with you throughout the year. So you want to participate in that process as much as possible. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit later in this episode. What else you want to do? You want to keep track of all of your documents. Now, if you trust the process and you participate in the process, then it's going to be easier for us to make sure that you have all of your documents. And let me give you a story of something that just happened yesterday. So I have a former client. Unfortunately, I had to withdraw from that engagement, and it was for the reasons I stated earlier. They didn't trust the process. They didn't follow the process. They really wanted to do things kind of their own way. And it's like, that's just wrought with errors. It's just going to create all kinds of problems, and so unfortunately had to withdraw. Well, now that person has come back and called ask questions about their prior year tax returns. And we explained to them, we did everything we were supposed to do, and we laid out all the things that we needed to do. And we were pretty much done with that engagement, but we would help them any way that we possibly could. Well, unfortunately, that client didn't like that answer. They went to another CPA, and the CPA is basically going to tell them the same thing that we told them. You didn't give us all the documents, and that is why you are encountering the issue that you encountered with the CPA. Why didn't we get all the documents? Because they didn't trust and participate in our process. They wanted to do things their own way, and they're going to pay several penalties and interest around this specific error. And like I've said in other episodes, CPAs talk to one another. And in some instances, a CPA has an ethical duty to call the other CPA and get information on what happened, not to check on you, but to make sure that they do everything correctly. And so we talk to one another. So keep all your documents, trust the process, participate in the process, and you're going to get the result that you want. Now, the next thing you want to do is confirm any deadlines that your CPA puts out there. And so what happens often that I see is we'll give a deadline to a client and say, hey, you need to get this done by this specific date. And the client will miss that deadline. Well, at that point, you now get lumped into a different bucket, at least within my firm. And you're now going to be in an expedited status because we have other clients that have listened to our deadlines and have complied. And if you miss that deadline, you're going to get pushed to the back of the line. Now, we're going to try to get to you as fast as possible, but now you're in the back of the line. And most CPAs have this kind of policy. And so make sure when you're working with your CPA, if they say you need to have the documents to us by this specific date, that you get it to them by that specific date, because that's going to help you to be able to timely file and meet any other deadlines that you have. Now, I want to give a word of warning regarding to filing extensions. And this is a real pet peeve of mine. It's a pet peeve of mine because it's bad on our side within the profession. You need to know that filing an extension is only an extension to file. It's not an extension to pay. So don't let a CPA just file an extension and say, hey, look, you know what? I'm just going to file the extension and then that's it. And then they disappear on you. The reason why you don't want to do that is because, again, they need to give you an estimated tax calculation if they're going to file an extension so you can minimize whatever penalties and interest you may incur for not paying on time. So again, the filing of the extension is not a extension to pay. It's an extension to file the tax return. And so if a CPA or any tax preparer comes to you and says, I'm just going to file an extension, you tell them, well, you need to make sure you give me an estimated tax calculation so that I can make a payment, a timely payment, so that I can minimize or eliminate any penalties and interest for the amount that I owe. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a justification for filing an extension, but you just want to make sure that if they do, they give you a tax number to pay so that you can pay when the extension or prior to when the extension is filed. And that kind of rolls us into the final point, which is the ultimate responsibility for anything that any of the results that a CPA does for you, which would be the tax returns or the financial statements. Those are yours. Now, we get regulated, we get fined, we get penalized for our mistakes. If we do something wrong, the IRS, whatever state that regulates us, they're going to come after us. We have a duty and a responsibility to make sure we get our work done accurately, completely, and thoroughly. We need to do our jobs. But when we do our jobs, in the end, whatever that result is, it's your result. So you need to make sure that you participate and that you read everything that's given to you. Don't be a passive participant in your tax return, in any of your accounting services. And I see this a lot. Clients kind of go on autopilot because they say, hey, look, this is the expert. I hired you to do this work. I'm just not even going to worry about it. And that is not a position that you want to have. And I want you to take a look at this. It's at the bottom of every single tax return and nearly every document that you sign. And when I prepare your tax returns, you're going to authenticate this same statement on other documents, not just the tax return. And what this statement basically says is you've read everything to the best of your ability, and you believe everything is accurate and complete. So you can't sign it, your tax return, passively. You can't sign it and then you just go, okay, well, it doesn't matter. If something's wrong, it's the CPA's fault. You need to participate in everything related to your financial situation. The tax returns, the financial statements, you got to be a participant in it, because in the end, the ultimate responsibility is yours. That's going to do it for this Tax Tuesday. Can't wait to get into the next Tax Tuesdays for next month. I got a lot of things that are very exciting, and I'm looking forward to presenting it to you.